I'm saying, like I have been for years, that there is no normal. The only normal is that everyone has a brain. And then it should be normal that the understanding is that everyone has a different brain. And at the end of the day, a brain is a brain. We're all human and we all deserve to live a life of distinction, which is why I personally identify as neurodistinct versus neurodivergent.
What if quiet wasn't something to overcome, but a competitive edge? Grant Harris is a proud introvert, a certified diversity executive, and a neurodivergent entrepreneur. And he's here to rewrite the leadership playbook. Welcome to the Powerful Introvert Podcast. I'm Greg Weinger. I'm here with Grant today. He's the founder and president of GTH Consulting, a certified diversity executive, a 3-time published autistic author, and a Hall of Fame athlete. He's also a proud introvert and someone who's never been afraid to bring his whole self to the conversation. Grant's lived experience makes him one of the most thoughtful voices in the DEI and leadership space today. I'm so glad to have you on the show today. Welcome, Grant.
Awesome to be here, Greg. I appreciate your humbling introduction. I never get used to hearing people talk about me, like to my face while I'm here. It's always a little unnerving, but I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation and hopefully your audience can get something out of it today.
Absolutely. You have really impressive accomplishments, and I'm really glad to speak with you today. If we could get into it, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your origin story. Really, when did you start to realize early on that you were experiencing the world in a different way than other people?
Yeah, great question. Appreciate the opportunity to go down memory lane a bit. My origin story, I'm a Washingtonian by trade, born and raised in the DC area to a family of personally identify as a Black man in America, which is not always easy and always comes with difficulties in many ways, shapes, and forms. But I have been extremely blessed in many ways. Some of the things that you mentioned earlier in the introduction, but I am a military school graduate, former college scholarship, Division I athlete. I played every sport that, you could touch a ball. Very proud to be inducted into my high school Hall of Fame. That's one of the few accomplishments in my life that I can look up and say, I did that kind of deal. Look at me, mom, I made it. So that was a blessing. Before college, origin story from a family perspective, that's one of being the first and the only. So I was either the first to do a lot of things in my family or the only to do so up until this point. That doesn't make me any better than my siblings. They've done things that I haven't. When it comes to the work that I'm doing, I was the first in my family to be diagnosed with a disability. Formerly, still the only one. The first in my family to be diagnosed as neurodivergent, as the label goes today. The first and the only to be diagnosed as autistic. There are many other markers of significance in life that society says that this is a level of success, and this is part of what I wrote about in my introduction in my first book. And these stat symbols that I've been blessed to achieve, but I don't necessarily look at it that way, because on the flip side of that, being the first person or sibling in my family to make a 6-figure income, well, that's awesome and great. Well, we all know 6 figures is not what it used to be in today's economy, but also on the flip side, people of color, and specifically Black people, still don't make as much money as their counterparts, still struggle in the economy with being one of the most unemployed sections of the economy in the workforce. And then you add to that now being autistic and all the difficulties with autistic people, 80 to 85% of them being under or unemployed. So all of these layers that I talk about, and that's just one aspect of money and work. There are multiple layers to the person that I was, the person I am today, the person who I will be. And I like to tell people that I'm an onion without the snow, because I have multiple layers of who I am, and being autistic is just one. Now, most recently, being introverted and talking about that probably is the newest layer. I've always, anybody who knows me personally would definitely 100% say that I describe myself as an introvert. I display introverted characteristics and traits. I enjoy being alone. I will do things alone versus with other people, any time, any place. I'm soft spoken by nature. I learned to use a command voice in military school. Will help with that. And to speak in public, but I prefer to be in the background. I prefer to be doing things to the left or the right of the spotlight. I'm okay with all of that. But I never really talked publicly until the last few months. People like you, your podcast, people at Black Introvert Week, both in the UK and the US, other folks that are in this community have these conversations for a long time. But this is a first for me to talk about it in the way that I am now. So that's a little bit about me and how we got to this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast to talk about that. My podcast is relatively new. I'm in my first season and I haven't spoken directly to someone who's autistic. How do you distinguish the parts of your personality that are autistic or neurodivergent from these parts that you feel are introversion?
Well, the short answer to that, Greg, is that I don't distinguish or separate them because they are all a part of me. Every layer of that onion that I mentioned earlier is part of the onion. So it's not like, oh, this layer is not part of me and I distinct between the perversion, it's all the same. They play off of each other and it's human nature to want to put things in a box, right? Especially when it comes to our personality, especially when it comes to how we self-identify, how we show ourselves to the world, how we show up in spaces, and we show up as one grant in this box and another grant in this box. But the work that I do with leaders and people and being an advocate in a space is that there has to be an understanding that's not necessary to separate them and say, well, I'm this over here and I'm code switching over here. Black people or people of color will be familiar with code switching, but we all do it. We all do it in certain scenarios. So I try not to separate the two and say, well, this is my introverted side versus my autistic side. It's not a this or that. It's not a versus. It's not a competition. It's the understanding and the self-reflection of this is how I'm showing up in the moment. And this is how I identify in that moment. However, I'm sure that people might have difficulty swallowing that pill, so to speak. My introverted side prefers to observe first and speak second, prefers less words to be more. 5 words will do versus 7 or 10 to get the point across. Prefers to be alone versus people. And even if I am in a crowd or group of people, I will subconsciously and consciously gravitate towards one person or 2 people max and have that conversation with them versus just mingling throughout the entire group. I prefer to focus on deep conversation or deep thought alone, period, and also deep just surface level. These kind of things. I get a visceral reaction when I'm out in public and I see someone that knows me and that I might know them, and I will literally hide or to a different aisle in the grocery store or turn so that you don't see me because I have to have an interaction and a conversation that I'm either not ready for mentally or physically in the moment, or I just don't want to do the small talk thing. It's a visceral, I don't control it. That's just who I am. And in some situations, obviously I put on the mask and I'm able to do that if I need to, but that's certainly not my preference. And internally the entire time, I'm like, really don't want to do this, nails on the chalkboard, but I'm going to do it because it's socially acceptable to be nice and to have a conversation in that moment when I see someone. But that also leads to stress on my part, anxiety on my part, having to be the one that masks. And I'm sure that other people around me, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But in general, the people who describe themselves as introverted or autistic are usually the ones that have to do the adjusting, the ones that have to do the masking and say, okay, I'm going to meet you where you are so you can be comfortable because it's socially acceptable. And it's not always the case that the other person does the same for the introvert and or the autistic person.
Absolutely. Well, you're ticking off introvert boxes all across the board there. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
listening could relate to everything you just described. Do you, I'm curious if you think there is such a thing as neurotypical. I've been hearing people lately, neuroscientists saying like there
Mhm.
actually is no such thing. Every brain is unique.
Correct. No, there is no typical, there is no normal, there is no standard from a theoretical perspective in my mind. From a medical paradigm, from a structural, from an infrastructure perspective, there has to be a standard that people, whatever society as a whole, and then whatever individual pockets of that society, there needs to be a standard that people can tether themselves to and say, okay, this is the floor, and enough people that are either smart enough, have enough money, power, or influence, which is the majority, says that this is the floor, this is the standard, and then everybody else is somehow different or other, then society needs to gravitate towards that. That's what we've been taught. And not all cultures are like that across the globe. Many are not. But in this era of American culture, it certainly is. So in my mind, no pun intended, no, there is no neurotypical because the only thing typical about the human brain is that everyone has one. That's the typical part. Everyone has a brain. That is the standard. But outside of that, the physical makeup is typical. The physical makeup of the brain, you have a brain stem, that's typical, but we don't interact unless you're a neurosurgeon. You don't really interact with the physical parts of the brain. You interact with the emotional and the psychological parts of the brain, which are vastly different for all of us. Even people who fall under the quote unquote umbrella of typical, even within that, their brains operate differently. So much less folks whose brains are in a completely different umbrella of neurodivergence. So no, I don't see, and I've written about this, I talk about this often, that normal is one of my least favorite words. And this was the case before I was doing DEI work, I knew that I was autistic, before I was having conversations with people like you. I didn't like the word normal because normal is really just based on your particular comfort and your personal bias. So, for example, my teenage daughter, if you have kids and if your audience has kids, you'll know teenagers are great and they're worse at the same time. I always talk about the taco shells. And my daughter likes tacos. I prefer chips or soft shell, but she likes hard shell. And we have tacos regularly. And I buy all the groceries. So many times in the past, I would bring taco shells and it wouldn't be the brand that she preferred or the color that she likes. I got what was on sale. It's a taco shell to me. And this brings in my autistic side as well. But I'd bring it home and she complain, be like, oh, next time, can you just like get the normal taco shells? And I'm like, there are no normal taco shells. There are taco shells that you like, that you prefer. But just because it's a different color or a different shape or a different brand doesn't make the ones that you prefer normal and the ones that I happen to buy not normal. That's not how it works. So that is always a story that I like to tell. But also, it's a little bit different. And there's a layer to that because my autistic nature, I am not a foodie. I don't really care about food. I use food as fuel. I have to eat. I'm human, these kind of things. My daughter, my wife, her whole side of the family, they're foodies. They love to talk about food, look at food, what are we gonna eat? All the like, I don't understand that. I get it, but that's not me. So from that layer, I can understand in her world, a different taco shell is a different taco shell, and her whole experience is gonna be different. Her whole mouth feel, the texture is gonna be different for her. So when you extrapolate that to the brain or people with experiences, they are comfortable with this particular taco shell. And when they experience a different taco shell or a different brain or a different reaction than what they're used to, then they're all, well, that's not normal because it's outside of their comfort zone. And I'm saying, like I have been for years now, that there is no normal. The only normal is that everyone has a brain. And then it should be the normal that the understanding is everyone has a different brain. And while those taco shells might be different, they're still taco shells. And at the end of the day, you're still going to eat You're still going to be fed. And at the end of the day, a brain is a brain. We're all human and we all deserve to live a life of distinction, which is why I personally identify as neurodistinct versus neurodivergent. So that's my taco shell story. And put it out there a lot because I think it's funny. But I also use it as a relatable way to think about the brain.
I really think that's a funny story too. And it's really powerful too, because as a metaphor, what we do all day about things that we think are immovable, really, we're just attached to the way things are, what we've been accustomed to. And yeah, we don't like it when we get this different brand of taco shell where the color of the tortilla is just slightly more yellow or whatever it is. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I wanted to ask you about your career progression. Maybe describe how you first entered the workforce and what did you encounter there and what led you eventually to the consulting work that you do.
So I've had many jobs in my day and many careers, so to speak. I've had about 3 careers where things that I've done or industries that I've been in, people have spent their entire career in, and I've cycled through. I didn't really understand that when I was cycling through. It was just a level of frustration for me. I didn't really keep a job a lot longer than 3 years max for many reasons. And so when I came out of school, I started out management consulting. I was managing a global workforce development program for the Army. I've been in management consulting. I've been in education as a K-12 educator, special educator. I taught autistic kids before I knew I was autistic, which probably helped, but I just didn't know at the time. I was in a low income, high free or reduced lunch, majority, minority, English as a second language teaching environment. And I was teaching the most restricted environment, meaning that these students basically stayed in one classroom for all of their classwork, and they were separated from the general population. And I also have been in K-12. Before K-12, that was in the middle school environment. Then I flipped the script and I went to high school, and it was completely different. The other side of the tracks, literally and figuratively, in that particular county. And it was all white, Asian, affluent high school at an elite STEM academy. And most of those students were going on to elite Ivy League schools and on to careers that middle school that I came from, probably not so much. But it was my job to market that elite STEM academy to those families on the other side of the tracks, to those students, to those Black and brown and underprivileged students, to show them that one, these opportunities exist, and two, that they're worthy of those opportunities. I transitioned into higher ed as well at the community college level because I'm a big proponent of community college. My daughter just started community college last week. I think it's the redheaded stepchild of education in this country and does not get as much respect as it deserves. So I spent time there in equity and HR role, facilitating the interview process, creating change and policy in terms of how staff was evaluated, how talent was brought into the organization, and also from a strategic planning perspective, working directly with the provost and the senior leadership team on strategy plans and how the school was promoted to the larger community as a whole. And after that, which again, most people would stay in one of those things for like their whole career, but I am always moving. My brain is always like, what else can I do? What else can I learn? How many other experiences can I have? Which led me to entrepreneurship, this is the third business that I've owned or operated, but it's been the most successful intrinsically and extrinsically. And it's connected to government contracting, government consulting, working with nonprofits, local, state, federal agencies. So always having the opportunity to think outside the box, do something for myself, do something differently than in a management consulting realm or an education realm. I always applied entrepreneurship principles to those roles, but they always felt like I just couldn't get outside the box or couldn't expand the box enough or those type of things, which led to being on my own and working with these agencies in my own different way and being able to pick and choose the people that I work with. So that's the long and short of my career path and journey, which I have multiple degrees and certificates that make me sound smarter than what I am. But it's not about the paper on the wall for me. It's about the knowledge and the experience, the cultural experience, and how I can apply those things to conversations like these, the consulting work that I do with the organizations, and to the speaking engagements that I do when it comes to an advocacy platform.
And it sounds like a lot in your career journey has been important experience for your current company, the management consultant with the educational background. So could you describe a little bit more specifically about what your current company does?
Like you alluded to in the intro, GTH Consulting is privately owned management consulting firm, and I provide services in the organizational development, human capital, and program management verticals. So I help organizations at the leadership level understand and appreciate and harness the business value of neurodiversity in the workplace. And I do that through consulting, writing, and speaking. The consulting arm is mostly focused on nonprofits and government entities to help them bolster their workforce to attract, hire, and retain neurodiverse and neurodistinct talent, to help them to understand the talent that they have on their hands already, to work through, to implement, and to integrate and improve policies, practices, and procedures. It's really about, from the entrepreneur's perspective, how are you maximizing the human capital that's already at your fingertips to maximize your financial capital and your bottom line. So that's the work that I do, and that comes through working with leaders. I always talk about the fact that this work is from the boardroom to the middle room, because neurodiversity impacts us all, either 30-year seasoned CEO or the 30-minute brand new intern. Neurodiversity impacts us all at every level of an organization. And not to mention the external customers that the organizations serve and that they sell to. So it's really the work from a consulting perspective. The speaking work that I do and the advocacy work is partnering with organizations that have their own platform or building their own platform and adding my distinct experience and voice to that, being a late diagnosed Black man with vast different experiences that I have, and not in terms of length of time, because I'm not, oh, I've been doing this for 40 years. That's not the experience I mean. I mean the vast difference of experience, because difference is what really counts. I talk about moving from compliance to community, and many organizations have a compliance mindset of this is what we have to do, or we've met the minimum, and that's really the floor. And community is really the ceiling. And in between that is where understanding that business value of neurodiversity really has the full impact. So that's the work that I do, the conversations that I have, in the realms that I have them in.
Yeah, I'm thinking of neurodiversity as kind of a superset of what I talk about on my podcast. I do think introversion is rooted in brain wiring, distinct brain chemistry that happens to impact 30 to 50% or more of the population. And I come from the tech sector where there's lots of neurodiversity, and the people I work with are weighted on the introverted side. And my contention has been that businesses are pretty ill-equipped to support people who are quieter. And this is not just human casualty. You're making life less pleasant for the people that you work for. This is a significant economic loss. You're not getting the value, the contributions that you could from your people. How do those conversations go? How do you present that argument or that case to leadership?
Well, you say presenting the argument, presenting the case is always the business value, the business case for the business case for DEI, the business case for fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's code for is convince me why this is important. Why should I care? That's not me. So why should I care? Make an argument and convince me. That's what it's code for. And it's unfortunate that's the way of it. So I approach it from, I'm not here to convince anybody. I always say that my job is not to convince. My job is to open people's minds to the thought that something might be a different way. So for example, Greg, if everyone in your life that you care about and that you respect has told you that the sky is purple, and I come along one day and I say, Greg, no, the sky is blue, you have no incentive to believe me, because again, everybody in your life and around you has said that it's purple. There's nothing that I could tell you, no science that I could show you that says, well, the sky is blue because everybody your entire life that it's purple. However, have a conversation with you and I ask you a question and I say, well, Greg, are there other colors that exist other than purple? And you go, yeah, there's red, there's green, there's blue, there's yellow, because you've experienced those things, right? And if I ask you deeper questions, like, well, if there are different colors of cars and there are different colors of people and there are different colors of clothes, maybe the sky might be a different color than what you think. And at that point, if the thought is there that, oh, the sky might be a different color, not that it is, and not that it's blue because I say it's blue, but the fact that the person is now thinking that it might be a different color and they're open to that. Now you can have a conversation. Now you can have reflection. Now you can work through a framework that I have at my RACE race framework, because you have recognized who and where you are in that journey to say, oh, the sky might be a different color, even though everybody around me for my entire life has told me that it's this particular color. So that's my approach to those conversations, is not that I'm going to come in the door and I'm going to show you all the stats. And in conversation one, month one, iteration one, you're just going to automatically be convinced and accept what I said. It's a conversation of self-reflection and understanding, because that's the foundation that has to be built in order for any true inclusion or any change to happen. Not because I convince you in a moment, because then somebody else can convince you in a moment of something else.
Mhm.
It's about having that self-reflective thought to be like, huh, yeah, I see it could be this. What if this happens? And what if that happens? So it's questions and it's self-reflection. And those are the conversations I have. That starts with thought leadership. That begins with conversations like these. That's why I have conversations like these, so that people can get a deeper understanding. It also is about specifying and targeting the people or the organizations that I choose to work with and for. And that comes with trial and error. But when I am met with those conversations, with those questions, that's the type of approach that I take. Is I'm not here to convince. I am here to help you come to conclusions of your own based on information that you didn't have before, in a way that is digestible to you.
It strikes me that there's an element of human connection that you're forming there.
Mhm.
Like, so you're not able to bring someone out of their thought patterns unless you're first connecting with them and then,
Mhm.
in a sense, helping them let their guard down to open their mind to new ideas. I'm curious, is that something that's come naturally for you? So, or is it something that you had to work toward?
I would say both subconscious and both conscious. So I have always say that I am much more interested in relationships than transactions. I many times in my life period and in my business life have earned transactions from an initial relationship that was built first. I have rarely, if ever, built a relationship that began on just transactions. What can I do for you? What can you do for me? One hand to wash the other. Doesn't really build a relationship. It's great for that one time. I need this, you need that. Good. More often than not, that doesn't lead to an actual relationship. Many times the reverse, building a relationship has led to more impactful, more engaging, and more long-term transactions, although it might have taken a longer time, but it's more worthwhile from a human connection perspective. That's why I talk about being neurodistinct, because we're all distinct human beings that deserve to live a life full of distinction. So yeah, there is a human connection. Now, I'm the first one to say that I'm not a people person. I don't like people that I don't know. But that comes from an aspect of, I'm not just going out in the street to talk to somebody and go out of my way to talk to somebody if I don't know them for any particular reason. That's what I mean by that. But I'm all in when it comes to relationships with people and building a deep and a long-standing relationship with you as an individual, and understanding your thoughts and your experiences and the juxtaposition between my thoughts and my experiences, because that's relationship building. That involves people, because, well, obviously we're not robots, but I'm not a networker, because that would be being a people person. Oh, I want to go talk to these bunch of people over here in this crowd. No, I
Mm.
want to build a relationship with Greg. And if I build a relationship with Greg, then that work with Greg will probably impact the entire room. That's the approach that I take.
So again, I think my audience can deeply relate to that description of interacting with people, even if we're fully honest with ourselves. Many of us sometimes do enjoy people, but most of the time we're most comfortable with the people we've already established relationships with. And then we've also heard you talk about emotional work. And so anyone who is on the quieter side, or has a quieter nature and wants to accomplish things in the world, there are things that we have to do that will make us uncomfortable and we'll be confronted with our discomfort. What has that been like for you? And what advice do you have for people who want to do more and are frankly confronted by strong emotions and the hard work of this?
And a great question. Two things that I say. So one is that I tell my kids this. I have five kids. Three of them are human, and then I have a dog, and then I have a pool. So I think I have five kids because the pool is just like a kid. It acts up, it does its own thing. I have to like nurture it and massage it, and I got to clean it, and it costs money. So I call it my fifth kid. But I tell my kids, my human kids, that in life you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable because that is how progress is made internally. If you never put yourself in a position to be uncomfortable, then it's nearly impossible to grow, to my knowledge and experience. So I would say get comfortable being uncomfortable. And then the flip side to that, another thing that I say is always get 1% better. And that's my personal mantra and goal daily is to get 1% better than I was the day before. And when it comes to suggestions for people who have anxiety in social situations, which I do too, people who have difficulty mustering up emotional or psychological or physical energy and effort just to deal is one, like I say, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that does not mean by any way, shape, or form to put yourself in a position that is going to harm you, that is going to do long term or cause long term suffering, any of that nature, because that's not the case. That's not what you should do just for the benefit of others. However, I do advocate for putting yourself in limited positions or time where you have escape routes, where you can remove yourself from a situation where there's no long term harmful repercussions to get 1% better and say, okay, well, I could do this. I thought that I couldn't be in this conversation with this person for 5 minutes, but I did it. I didn't think that I could go to the grocery store and have a conversation with the cashier, but I did it. These kind of things, small things that you have an escape route, you can remove yourself from are beneficial. When it comes to the workplace and aspects of how to do that in the workplace, several examples could be if you're in a physical space, and I know many of us are remote, but either way, if you're in a physical space, you can stand around other people in a group for a couple of minutes when maybe you would have just passed them by. And just the fact that you're standing there, someone at some point in time may notice you, which may or may not lead to a conversation. And I'm not saying that you have to have a full on small talk, but just being physical and putting your physical presence around other people, that's an option. When it comes to the virtual environment, I usually have camera choice and I'm usually off camera because that helps me save energy. Well, if you have camera choice and you prefer to be off, then try being on only when you speak. If you're speaking, turn the camera off. And then if you're not in that meeting, if you're not presenting, then go back to turn the camera off. These kind of small things give you the opportunity to get comfortable being uncomfortable for a limited amount of time. And in my opinion, give you the opportunity to get 1% better with yourself to say, I did this, I accomplished that, and then see where you can go from there. It is not based on anyone else's desire or need or thought about you. This is all based off of your personal desire and need and comfort level of, for lack of a better term, pushing yourself to a level that you haven't been before. So only do these things and only put yourself in these positions because you consciously decide that's something that you want to do, not because other people put you in that position of having to do so against your will.
It's great advice. What advice would you have to someone who is quieter, who is interested in leadership because they see things out there,
And
they want to make a difference?
I am the first person to say and the teams that I've been on, that I prefer to be an individual contributor. I want to do my deal, get my check. I want to be good at what I do, these kind of things over the history. But I don't want to manage people. I don't want to have that responsibility. But I also say that I do want to lead. I do want to be a leader. I do want to provide leadership within an organization throughout the organizations that I work with. And that doesn't require being a people manager or having the biggest title. So that's the first mindset shift, is that leadership doesn't require a title, and it doesn't require you to manage and lead other people directly. That's a common misconception. Most of the leadership positions that I've been in haven't required a fancy title and haven't required me to manage other people formally, informally sometimes, but not formally. So if you are on the quieter side, there are ways to contribute to a conversation, to a project, to an initiative without having to stand up in the front of the room, without having to put yourself, quote unquote, out there. You can have sidebar conversations. You can give your input before the meeting in a one-on-one meeting. You can send that in an email to the leader or the chair or the person who is the decision maker in that aspect in confidentiality. After the meeting, you can follow up with your questions. You can take all those notes and all those questions like I have in the past and synthesize them afterwards and reflect on them and then pick the 1 to 3 that stand out the most. And from that 1 to 3 that stand out the most, come to find out what the most important point, the MIP, I call it, the most important point. And that's what you bring back to whomever is the leader in that group to make a decision, et cetera, in that way. So you can do things before, you can do things after. Then the question is, well, what about in the middle, during that meeting or during that project or during that initiative? There are ways to participate. You don't have to be verbal. You can request to use signals, physical hand signals. And this is a conversation in a one-on-one, which is a big deal because these things should be happening in conversation and in concert with the leaders already in the room. And that's an opportunity for you to show leadership because you are advocating for yourself. And if you're advocating for yourself, then you can advocate for others. So that's a form of leadership that, again, doesn't really have anything to do with managing other people. It has everything to do with managing your self-worth, your self-value, your self-advocacy, because you're bringing value to the table before the meeting, after the meeting, or during the meeting. It's not just the saying, well, what can you do for me? I don't want to say anything in the meeting, but then you never contribute a solution to the problem. You should be contributing, but you can also always contribute in different ways. And that is a different form of leadership. And you can have those quiet conversations with one-on-one folks. And those people should be champions. They shouldn't be the people that will do you the most harm, so to speak. So find those champions that either will listen to you and or will champion your platform so that you're still bringing things to the table that are different than what the other folks are saying or doing. You're just doing it in a different time, in a different way.
Such a great distinction between management and leadership because everyone has this opportunity to lead, whether they're at work or out in the community or even in their home. There's always this opportunity to lead. And another point I really liked that you covered there was that ability to speak out and advocate for yourself. You are advocating for other people because there are other people who are like you and having similar experiences. And so you become an advocate. And I've seen this even within my own company, some quieter people beginning to advocate for meetings ending early so there's time in between meetings and things like that. They're not necessarily the managers of the company, but they're leading in those instances.
And that type of leadership benefits the whole. It seems like if you are the extroverted leader, it seems like that those people are just trying to serve themselves. But when you take a step back from it and if you approach it with the community mindset versus the compliance mindset, you'll see that those things actually benefit the whole. There's extensive research that shows that shorter meetings are better than long. Extensive research that shows that agendas or knowing what's going to happen before something happens is beneficial to productivity because people aren't stressing out about what they don't know. They already have information and they can come to the table with some type of solution, idea, input, and that leads to productivity. So these types of things is not about, oh, well, these people just want to end the meeting early. No, these people want to end the meeting on time and or early so that they could go back to being productive and doing what they're doing, building the widget, building the platform, making the sale. So they just want to value their time. And in valuing that time, you value everybody's time. And if your time is more effective and efficient, then your people are more effective and efficient. And then you save money and then you make money. But not all leaders go through that chain of thought. When they see a request or an accommodation come through, they just see it as quote unquote special treatment for that one person. One, no, it's not, point blank. It's not special treatment. But two, when you look at it, that benefit for that individual could benefit the whole. And more often than not, the individual benefit does benefit the whole.
Grant, we're about at time. If people want to learn more about you and your work, where can we send them?
So website www.compliance2community.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Grant Harris 555. There's a few Grant Harrises out there. For me, I'm Grant Harris 555, and I'll share this with you in the show notes as well. And I also have just basically a website for all websites and all of my writing and my arrows, and people can contact me there, email me, and get on my schedule for a call and a meeting. These kind of things are all on my link tree, and I'll share that with you as well. But most of my activity is on LinkedIn at Grant Harris 555.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being on the show. You have such great messages and stories to tell. I'm so glad that you've been here to share it with my audience.
Thank you, Greg. It has been a pleasure.